Hey, good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Happy to see you this Sunday morning, this rainy morning. Finally, the winter season has come, right? We're getting rain. That's the sign, sure sign that winter is heading our way, right? Just as this morning we sang a number of songs that come from the Japanese tradition, both written by unificationists from Japan and also some of the Christian songs that were from Christian hymnals in Japan. The theme today is thank you. Thank you, Japan. Right? Appreciating all that Japan and Japanese members have done for America, the world, and for God's providence. This was inspired because yesterday the HJI, formerly the Unification Theological Seminary, sponsored an event in East Garden to honor the Japanese missionaries who first came to, just need one light, yeah, who first came to the United States in the first big wave 50 years ago in 1973. They came to America in response to True Parents' call to come and work in the Providence in America. It was a great, I hope they have a recording of it because there was lots of testimonies, inspiring stories that people shared of those early days. There was one great expression, and it was kind of offhandedly shared by one brother, the Reverend Milhan Stevens, who's the pastor of the church in the New York City area. He's a second gen, and he kind of, after all of the testimonies, and they were kind of closing up, and he was the one that was going to give the, Ukmansei, hooray, at the end of the event. And he made this really, I think, appropriate analogy about Japan. And if you think about Japan went from being Saul to St. Paul. If you remember the story of Jesus and the New Testament, Saul was one of the main persecutors of Christians until he had an experience with Jesus Christ. And then he changed his name to Paul, became St. Paul, and was the greatest evangelist for Christianity in all of Christian history. There's no one who did more to establish Christianity than St. Paul. So he went from the persecutor of Christians to the greatest evangelist. So it's interesting, if you think about Japan's history is kind of difficult. I think Christianity first came to Japan in 1549. And for like the first 50 years, it prospered. It was received. But at some point, the shoguns and the leaders, they said, start thinking, well, we don't like this. And around 50 years later, persecution and lots of massacres started. And they basically began to just eliminate Christianity from Japan, over a period of say, 30 years. By 1638, I think there was tens of thousands of Christians were killed. And it became illegal to be a Christian in Japan. And that lasted for like 250 years until the 1870s, 1871, when they opened up to the West. And, that wasn't going to fly when you're dealing with Christian nations. But you still couldn't witness. But, that was the early Christian history in Japan. And then we have World War II in the early 1900s. Of course, Japan was oppressed Korea a lot. Our tradition comes from Korea. But also during World War II in Japan, China, also the Philippines, there's kind of a legacy not to be proud of from that history. The amazing thing is that True Parents chose Japan as a providential Eve nation. And Eve nation means the nation is going to be leading in bringing about building God's heavenly kingdom on earth. And if you look at it today, Japanese members of the Unification Movement are serving in pretty much every country in the world where we have a Unification Movement present. It's quite phenomenal if you think about it. They became the greatest evangelist for the Unification Movement in the world. So, I want to focus on that today. This is from the Chunbogyeong, and from the First World Tour, when Father speaking tour. Father Moon said, "In the past, Korea and Japan were enemies. In order to indemnify this, I had to bring the most beloved and the most hated persons and the most beloved and hated nations to relate to one another in God's presence. As a nation, Japan stands in the position of Mary and Tamar. Tamar represents the position to liberate the people. Mary represents the position to liberate the nation. The mother stands in the position to liberate the cosmos." So let's just look for a minute at the contributions that Japan has made to God's providence. The first one, like I've already said, is missionaries. Missionaries, of course, to the United States, but to the world. 1973, the first wave, some Japanese missionaries had come over earlier, but the first big wave of missionaries came in 1973. And they helped with things like the Madison Square Garden and the One World Crusade. Also, many European missionaries came at the same time. In 1975, Father and Mother Moon sent out missionaries to the whole world, eventually to 120 and even more nations around the world. One Japanese, one American, and one German were sent to the planet. And then, I remember in the 1990s and up to 2000, True Parents asked the Japanese wives to go out as missionaries to all of the National Messiah countries. We had 10 moms came to San Marino when we were doing mission in San Marino, leaving their children behind to come and serve and sacrifice and to help that country in the development. And I remember, also a few years back when we had this wave of young Japanese sisters come to help with their outreach to Christian churches, visiting other denominations. Many of them not even speaking English, but faithfully coming and serving as missionaries. This is really a significant thing. I mean, it's hard for us, of course. Maybe less than half of us are Native Americans, but imagine leaving your country, your homeland, and going to a country where you don't speak the language. And you're there to do a mission for God. How challenging, how sacrificial. And I'm so grateful, I have to bow down to every one of you, that came to America, where America's English is not your first language. And you came and you served. And this happened all around the world, in countries around the world. The second big contribution was just in the whole outreach and witnessing activities. Like I said, the One World Crusade, the Day of Hope tours, the God Bless America campaign, which was Yankee Stadium and Washington Monument. All of these were many Japanese missionaries were mobilized to help revive America, to bring America back to God. Even the Japanese leadership were the first to help start up the CARP, our outreach on college campuses, and the outreach to clergy, both from the Kauza work, which was the teaching about Godism, to the international interdenominational conferences for clergy, where we took clergy to Korea to study the unification principle, the Women's Federation for World Peace. A lot of the victory over communism work was done and pioneered and developed in Japan. So the Japanese members faithfully responded so many times to God's call, the True Parents' call. And then there's the area of finances and businesses. Japan provided worldwide financial support, oftentimes at the sacrifice of the local church, to support the mission around the world. Many of the properties in America were supported because of Japan's financial support, even the Washington Times. All this happened because of the sacrifice from Japan. And not only that, they helped us build our own economic foundation in America. You know, the development of and leading mobile fundraising teams, that was pioneered by Japanese. I was talking with Reverend Krishnik, saying, you know, and he was a big MFT captain leading teams around fundraising. He says, you know, the Japanese basically raised us up, you know, especially on the mobile fundraising teams, and also in terms of businesses. Father Moon likes to talk a lot about how really the Japanese unificationists brought sushi to America. You know, people didn't raw fish. No one ever thought about eating raw fish in America. You know, and actually Japanese missionaries brought and created restaurants all around the country. And not only that, developed the largest seafood business, True World Foods, you know, in the country. You know, and brought, you know, seafood back into the thinking of the American diet. And you see everywhere. I mean, you know, you can go down the block and see sushi restaurants everywhere now. You know, and that was really pioneered by Japanese missionaries coming to America. And just the whole development of business, even a lot of the newspapers, they had a start because Father Moon called, you know, Japanese missionary, says, I need a newspaper in New York. Well, I don't know anything about newspaper. Don't even speak good English. That doesn't matter. I need a newspaper. And they faithfully did it. And that was the beginning of the news world and eventually the Washington Times. So many things, you know, in the financial and business realm. And then there's the education and tradition that we received thanks to Japanese missionaries, particularly here in America, but around the world. In America, especially, being able to understand a lot of the tradition of filial piety and Asian tradition, you know, even understand bow. You know, America, we don't bow. We shake hands, right? But understanding how do we attend God? How do we attend true parents? How do we have this tradition of respect and honoring? And this wholehearted dedication and devotion and sacrifice and teamwork. These are all traditions that really we Americans, especially as young hippies when we joined, you know, had no thought. I mean, you know, you go back, 100 years or so, we had a lot more tradition in America. But boy, I tell you, the 1960s, us hippies, we had no thought of that kind of tradition. And we really were raised up and educated from the Japanese missionaries. You know, Father Moon, when he wanted to really ramp up the education in America, he called a Japanese missionary, Reverend Ken Sudo. So many of us early members were educated by Reverend Sudo. You know, 7-day workshop, 21-day workshop, the 120-day workshops. Reverend Ken Sudo was the teacher, you know, that taught so many of us. And even the collecting of Father and Mother Moon's words, the first edition of the Chunseongyang, that was actually created by Japanese members in Japan. We translated from Japanese to English. And that's how we got our first one. So much. I mean, even now, sometimes if I want to find out the latest thing, you know, I ask one of the Japanese members who have the hotline to Japan, right? Because the news comes there first. Actually, even the holy songs that we have in America, you know, we came from Korea. They didn't come directly from Korea. They came from Japan. Actually, it was a Japanese sister. It was wonderful. I heard a great testimony about all the effort that went into translating from Japanese into English all the holy songs that we have now in our holy songbook. Including those ones we've sang today that came from Japan, like the Song of Victory that was written by a church member, When I Behold the Lord, and Light of Grace. Those are Japanese Christian church songs that we've inherited. All those we benefited from the Japanese who brought those and made them available to us in America, so that we could also inherit that kind of heavenly tradition and understand about God's heart. So we have so much to be grateful to the Japanese members. At the same time, what's our contribution? Right? We inherited so much. We've inherited from missionaries, from their outreach, from their finances, from the tradition. So in our own lives too, let's also, each one of us, realize we're all missionaries. We're all called to reach out. Maybe it's not to go to a far-off land. Thank you again so much. But even in our neighborhood, in our workplace, with our family, the people that we have the opportunity to interact with, we're all called to represent God and true parents. We're all called to outreach and to share the precious news we have. True parents are here. The chance to connect to God as our heavenly parent is here. The understanding of how God is working to bring healing to us, that there is hope in this world. This is we're called to do. And through our tithes and our offerings, we're supporting not just this church, but we're supporting missionaries around the world. I'm really praying that we, as even our local Sacramento church, that we can be raising enough funds that we're also sending money to support other countries. Japan has done it for so long. America should be doing that. America should be sending money to the world. And in our own lives of faith, in our own study, education, and tradition, these are also traditions that we pass on within our own family, with our children, but also to the people in our community around us, helping people understand particularly about God's heart. God is our heavenly parent. We have so much to share, so much that we can share. So we have good examples. So let's also make our contributions to God's providence. So let me just finish up with reading some words from Father Mother Moon. This is particularly from Mother Moon's memoir. Mother Moon wrote, Japan was the second country in which the Unification movement developed. Theirs has been a tortuous course. And when you study and realize the kind of difficulty and challenges they've gone through, it's just unbelievable. Despite such hardships, the Unification movement in Japan has grown steadily. It also sent thousands of missionaries throughout the world. They've invested themselves wholeheartedly in teaching the divine principle and serving local communities. In the context of God's global providence, true parents bless Japan as the mother nation. A mother gives everything to her children unconditionally. Japan is walking the path of sacrifice with the heart of a mother for the sake of the world. So, we have to always be grateful for all that Japan and Japanese members have done for God, for true parents, for the providence, for the world, for this nation of America. So much sacrifice. And even right now, they're receiving so much difficulty and suffering in Japan. Please keep Japanese members in your prayers, that they can feel our gratitude, our heart, and they can know they're never abandoned, never forgotten. If only the Japanese government could understand and appreciate the incredible impact Japan has had on the world through Japanese unificationists. It's phenomenal. The difference that Japanese unificationists have made in the world is phenomenal. It's something that Japan can forever be proud of in God's providence. It's the legacy that Japan has. If the government even had an inkling of that, in sharing Reverend Milham Stevens, he said, it feels like the impact and the profound blessing we receive from Japanese members in the Japanese church is like the best kept secret. But it shouldn't be a secret. The world needs to know, and the world needs to express the gratitude that we have towards Japan. And especially in their time of difficulty, in their time of persecution and suffering. Let's don't be ungrateful children. The parents who sacrifice, the mom who sacrificed so much for the kids. And the kids just ignore the suffering of the mother, the suffering and difficulties that she's going through. No, let's don't be those kinds of children. Let's be grateful children who love and care and can tell mom, don't worry, mom, we'll take care of you. So in our prayers, in our devotion, in our thoughts and heart towards those who are suffering in Japan, don't worry, we'll take care of you. We'll never abandon you. I'm so grateful when I hear the work and the efforts. Particularly, UPF is taking the lead right now. Particularly, they're going to visit on Capitol Hill every week on Wednesday. They go and they visit Congress people. Please speak boldly to Japan about religious liberties and the big mistake that they're making. And people around recognizing the incredible benefit that Women's Federation has brought to local communities in Japan. And really raising that up. Let's be grateful children that appreciate and love and care for our mother, especially when she's in such a difficult situation that she's experiencing right now. Please join me in prayer. Father, Mother God, our loving Heavenly Parent, we're so grateful for the investment that we've received, the many blessings we've received. When you called Japan to serve the world in the mother position, they responded and to sacrifice so much. So, Heavenly Parent, as the children who receive that, we want to be truly grateful. So we pray, Heavenly Parent, that especially your Holy Spirit can be powerfully present in Japan right now, especially with the families that are suffering under persecution and difficulty, that the nation of Japan can recognize the incredible value that unificationists have brought to that nation, that the difference that nation has been able to make around the world because of unificationist missionaries. And that we can be forever grateful. Heavenly Parent, thank you so much for your love, for your perseverance. We know that no sacrifice is ever wasted, is ever lost. That no matter what, forever, Japan will hold in our hearts, in the heart of your providence, the highest place is the mother who gave birth to the unificationist movement around the world. So, Heavenly Parent, we thank you. We come together as your grateful sons and daughters and report this together. Amen and adieu.